I am Vincen's wife, yet Vincen takes pleasure in bringing various women home to humiliate me. The kidnappers abducted his beloved Aria and me, demanding that Vincen pay a substantial ransom to save one of us. Vincen chose Aria without hesitation, watching coldly as the kidnappers threw me into the sea, though later he searched for me frantically and nearly leapt into the sea in a suicidal act. Unbeknownst to him, I was at that moment using his ransom money to hire 8 male models, caressing their abdominal muscles while marveling at the splendor of life. "Serena, fetch Chloe a pair of slippers," Vincen said lazily from the doorway, his arm around a curvaceous beauty as he glanced at me. The woman in his embrace was strikingly familiar. Just a month prior, she had stood awkwardly at the villa's entrance with her obsequious mother, timidly greeting me. Now, I gazed dazedly at her expensive designer clothing and luxury handbag, unable to recall the color of the worn t-shirt she had on back then. Chloe nestled in Vincen's arms, flashing me a smug smile. It appeared that after I recommended her for a junior assistant role at Vincen's company, she had thrived and advanced rapidly. Within a mere month, rumor had it she had risen to become Vincen's second secretary, her once innocent and hesitant face now adorned with sophisticated makeup. I responded calmly, retrieving a pair of slippers from the cabinet by the door and handing them to Chloe. As she reached for them, Vincen suddenly chuckled, likely just back from the office, still clad in an expensive tailored suit, leaning against the entryway with an air of tall, refined dignity. Vincen's appearance was undeniably striking, with a sharp jawline, a prominent nose, and a handsome visage, though his deep eyes seemed impenetrable, as if no one could discern his thoughts. At that moment, hearing his laugh, Chloe's hand paused mid-reach for the slippers, her gaze involuntarily shifting to Vincen, who looked at me with a malicious grin, saying, "Chloe is a guest, after all, shouldn't you personally help her with her shoes?" I locked eyes with Vincen unflinchingly, and after a mere second, I made my decision, squatting down to personally remove Chloe's 5-figure high heels and carefully slipping the slippers onto her fair ankles. Chloe's smug demeanor abruptly faltered. She stared at me in shock, her body rigid, managing only a strained smile toward Vincen. Meanwhile, Vincen's smile turned icy. He regarded me expressionlessly for a moment before sneering, "Truly an obedient little dog." Chloe, likely startled, sat on the sofa with her hands clasped, a faint unease creeping into her expression, reminiscent of her first visit a month ago. I could empathize. Even if she intended to flaunt herself before the legitimate wife, she likely never imagined I would stoop so low as to change her shoes, unaware that such acts had become routine for me, no longer even registering as humiliation. Vincen, in a foul mood perhaps because he didn't see the reaction he desired on my face, strode upstairs to his study, slamming the door with a bang, leaving Chloe behind, her expression growing even more awkward. I timely fetched a plate of sliced fruit from the kitchen and placed it before Chloe, smiling as I gestured, "Fresh mangosteen, I noticed you enjoyed it last time." Indeed, on her first visit here, Chloe had stared at the mangosteen for a long time. At my warm invitation, she tried one, and her eyes lit up. Perhaps surprised that I recalled her preference, Chloe froze, flustered, her face flushing as she stammered, "You still remember what I like to eat." I said nothing, merely maintaining a faint smile. Chloe's voice softened. "That was my first time seeing mangosteen, and my first time tasting it. Once you've had such premium fruits, apples and oranges just don't appeal anymore." I lowered my gaze to the mangosteen on the plate and replied gently, "Is that so? Yet I've always liked apples, always have, always will." Chloe looked at me, puzzled and uncomprehending. "What's so great about apples?" I smiled faintly, shaking my head without a word, though my eyes softened considerably. After dining with Chloe, Vincen descended. He cast an indifferent glance at her, asking, "Why are you still here?" causing Chloe's face to flush red instantly. I escorted Chloe to the door and arranged for the family driver to take her home. Before stepping into the car, she glanced back at me, hesitating, but ultimately only bowed in silence. "I'm truly sorry today, madam," Chloe said as she left. Vincen then sat on the sofa, scrutinizing my every move, his tone harsh. "It's so late, don't you know to prepare dinner for your husband? Did I marry you to be a mere ornament?" I obediently entered the kitchen without a word of protest. I had once tried to argue, only to be met with, "I paid such a steep price to save your family's mess, you ought to serve me like a beast of burden." Thus, long ago, I grasped one truth: with Vincen, unconditional compliance was the only way. While cooking, oil from the pan splashed onto my finger, eliciting a soft hiss. Vincen's ears, inexplicably keen, caught even this muted sound, and he strode into the kitchen, spotting my finger under cold water, swiftly grasping it to examine it closely. Noticing a small blister, he clicked his tongue, frowning at me impatiently. I thought it was a serious injury so fragile? Utterly useless, can't even cook. Stop it, go sit on the sofa. I obediently sat on the sofa as Vincen retrieved a medical kit from the room, applying burn ointment to my blister with the meticulous care of an artisan crafting a masterpiece. His focus was absolute, a sight that would move anyone and set their heart racing. Yet, in truth, I had never learned to cook after our marriage. Vincen dismissed all the household staff simply to torment me, leaving me to handle every task, large or small, myself. As Vincen concentrated on applying the ointment, his phone on the coffee table chimed, and with a glance, my long-dormant heart stirred faintly. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, this man, tending to the blister on my finger, clearly adored her, his contact note unabashedly proclaiming his admiration and affection. My long-numbed heart unexpectedly felt a subtle, stinging ache, though it quickly faded. Indeed, to Vincen, she was likely someone he longed to cherish utterly, as one would Aphrodite far beyond the likes of Chloe, brought home daily to degrade me. I suspect he wouldn't even recall Chloe's name, but Aphrodite, his cherished ideal, an embodiment of love and regret, an object of purity, was Aria, a woman who ensured my husband's eternal resentment toward me. A single late-night message from Aria effortlessly summoned my husband. Vincen didn't even finish applying the ointment, rising abruptly upon seeing her text and grabbing his coat to leave. My calm eyes followed him as I asked softly, "Will you return tonight?" Without turning, Vincen replied, his voice laced with subtle mockery, "What do you think? Are you worthy of comparison to her?" I watched Vincen's retreating figure, my heart long past feeling pain. This wasn't Aria's first time drawing him away from me, and though she succeeded every time, she never tired of it. Were I in her place, I'd have grown weary long ago. What more was there to prove? To Vincen, I wasn't worth even a single strand of her hair. I couldn't even be deemed Aria's rival or adversary, for I was merely an ornament Vincen kept out of great kindness, a puppet summoned and dismissed at will, doing whatever its master commanded. Yet this time, it seemed even Aria had grown bored. Gazing at the message from a familiar number on my phone, I closed my eyes. 5 years, preserve some dignity for yourself. The condescending tone and charitable undertone unmistakably conveyed that I should depart with dignity. Indeed, I too wished to leave gracefully, making way for Aria smoothly, sparing myself excessive embarrassment in the eyes of the world. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop agreed upon with Aria. She was already there, dressed in a simple white dress, her waist-length black hair sleek and glossy. Time having left no mark on her lovely face, she still resembled her college self, youthful, elegant, noble, with an artistic air. I offered her a polite smile. "Sorry to keep you waiting." Aria glanced at me, her clear almond eyes brimming with composure. "No matter, I just arrived myself. My exhibition ended, and I stopped by. Vincen should return shortly too." There was no gloating or pretense, only a patient explanation. I nodded with a slight smile, inwardly marveling at how she, Vincen's cherished one, spoke flawlessly while subtly asserting her claim. Aria's recent art exhibition had been a resounding success, a fact I was aware of. It was said Vincen had personally overseen it, tolerating no errors. Vincen had spent the entire day with Aria. The headline "Le Chuang CEO and renowned returning artist Aria share sweet moments at exhibition" was impossible to ignore. The news photos of Vincen and Aria smiling at each other exuded palpable chemistry, prompting netizens to rave about their soulful gazes. Upon learning they were each other's first loves, fans descended into a frenzy of support. Naturally, I, the vile interloper who disrupted this perfect pair, was viciously exposed and vilified online. I skimmed most comments, but one "such a woman deserves to have her whole family die" left me stunned for a long while. Miss Serena, Miss Serena?" Aria's call snapped me back, her crescent brows furrowed, her tone cool. I said, "I hope you'll voluntarily leave with nothing. Did you hear me?" "Leave with nothing," I murmured, as Aria calmly adjusted a strand of hair by her temple, her slender fingers tapping the table once. The Fu family's assets cannot be yours. You've been supported by Vincen since marriage, haven't you? Still, Vincen and I won't shortchange you. I'll ensure he gives you 10 million. You're not the greedy type, are you? Her final words came as she stared into my eyes, a hint of probing in her tone. An outsider might have mistaken it for casual banter between friends. Regrettably, it was one woman demanding another relinquish her husband, shamelessly offering charity. How ironic. I curved my lips, lifting my head to meet her gaze steadily. Fine, I accept. Aria seemed surprised by my compliance, but it suited her perfectly, and she welcomed it eagerly. Perhaps relieved of a long-standing burden, she stirred her coffee spoon, her demeanor easing as she chatted with me like a confidant. This exhibition truly exhausted me, but thankfully it was a success. Seeing so many admire my work brings me great satisfaction. Honestly, after returning to the country, I nearly gave up on art, but Vincen's unwavering support kept me going. You could find something you enjoy doing too. I smiled and sipped my coffee. Aria's eyes suddenly sparkled, her poise intact yet tinged with girlish delight and shyness. Vincen, what are you doing here? Vincen had appeared behind me unnoticed, his casual stance and striking, handsome figure instantly drawing every eye in the cafe. He approached Aria, draping his coat over her shoulders with care, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard. It's still a bit chilly. You're underdressed. I'll drop you off on my way. Aria's shy expression complemented the elegant, poised artist beside the suited young CEO, a pair seemingly destined for each other. As Vincen took Aria's hand to leave, he seemed to notice me only then, casting a cold glance my way. If you've nothing to do, go home. Always out in public. Do you think you're Aria? Aria smiled helplessly, as if mildly irked by Vincen, consoling me kindly. Don't mind Vincen's nonsense. What era is this? Women can pursue careers outside too. Before she could finish, Vincen scoffed, his sidelong glance dripping with disdain. A career? Her? Aria said no more, offering me an apologetic smile before departing gracefully with Vincen. I remained silent, observing their intimate exchange. Aria, your night star has garnered praise. I've contacted a private collector for you. I don't want to sell Night Star. Why not? It holds special meaning for me. Night Star is you. Vincen turned, tenderly brushing Aria's nose with affection. All right, I'll hang it at home and treasure it. When Aria and I were bound back to back, she wept while I drifted in thought. It seems even the calmest and most refined crumble to tears when faced with life or death. Especially when the kidnappers tossed us to the cliff's edge, where the endless sea and jagged coastal rocks loomed below. Aria screamed in terror, shifting desperately to distance herself. The camera focused on us as Vincen's roar echoed through. I said I'd pay the ransom. What are you doing? A kidnapper grinned, roughly tapping my face with a knife. You've stalled too long, Vincen. You spent tens of millions on your lover's exhibition without hesitation. Now we only want $1 billion. Is that too much? Vincen's gritted teeth were nearly audible through the screen as he enunciated. The Fu family isn't mine alone to command. $1 billion in liquid funds requires time to arrange. The kidnapper let out a cryptic scoff. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain on my cheek, warm blood dripping onto my pants. Blood stained the knife as the kidnapper grinned at the camera. Oh, Vincen, waiting gets boring. Every day you delay, we'll carve a cut on your wife or lover's face. How's that? Vincen stared at the gash on my face through the screen, fists clenched, silent. But another man's choked please burst from the kidnapper's phone. Don't hurt my sister. Please. Vincen, say something. I'll transfer all the company's funds to you. Just stop them from touching her. My facial muscles twitched as I, half my face bloodied and ghastly, gazed at the screen, murmuring, brother. For reasons unknown, Vincen erupted, pointing at my brother Devon and shouting, it's just a cut on her face. Why the fuss? Do you want them to see how much you care and give them more leverage over you? The kidnappers burst into laughter, pressing the knife to Aria's face. Her eyes widened in terror, face pale, struggling futilely as another kidnapper held her head firm. As the knife hovered, Vincen's strained voice broke through the screen. Don't touch her. I'll get you the ransom tonight. The kidnappers exchanged glances, clucking. Well, looks like the lover's the real love. He wouldn't let anyone pity his sister, but now he's all torn up for his darling. Haha. But, Vincen, your earlier words irked us. I want to toy with you now. 1 billion can only save one, your wife or your lover who'll it be? Vincen's face darkened instantly, gritting out, that's not what you said before. Yet he knew reasoning with kidnappers was futile. As they shoved Aria and me to the cliff's edge, holding our ropes with one hand, Vincen finally lost his composure. Under their prodding, he rasped, I choose Aria. The kidnappers abruptly turned the screen, and I met Vincen's gaze. He was ashen, lips pale, yet I offered him a calm smile. Vincen's pupils contracted, his lips trembling as if to speak, but in the next moment, he watched helplessly as the kidnappers pushed me off the cliff. They even deliberately showed him my fall into the sea on the phone like an unwanted stray. I didn't struggle, plummeting effortlessly into the depths with a splash, followed by stillness. In truth, Vincen and I could only be described as a fated misfortune. Our families, long-standing allies, had jokingly betrothed us as children, though called a childhood engagement. Everyone knew it was a strategic marriage for mutual gain. Perhaps as a young child, I harbored some affection for Vincen. I used to cling to him, even sharing the milestone of my first period with him before anyone else. But back then, Vincen merely sneered, calling me a naive little girl who knew nothing of menstruation. Despite his harsh words, he blushed and bought me sanitary pads. When did I stop seeking Vincen's closeness? Likely at my sophomore birthday party, where everyone saw my fondness for him and urged him to cut me the first slice of cake. To my surprise, Vincen actually complied. I felt a mix of shock, joy, and excitement, thinking he might harbor a trace of affection for me too. Yet I was too naive then, utterly blind to how much Vincen loathed me, his fiancée tied to him for life. Before everyone, he dumped the entire cake on my head. Silence followed, and as I stood there, drenched and stunned, Vincen smiled, the still youthful handsome boy showing satisfaction. Your birthday gift, don't be delusional, he said. That day's cake was bitter, likely mingled with my tears. In hindsight, I was grateful to Vincen. Without that act, I might have lingered in that laughable girlish infatuation far longer. As an adult, Vincen, the pampered youngest son of the mighty Fu family, had countless women vying for him. He either ignored or mocked me, and in college, he flaunted a passionate, widely known romance with Aria, a slap to my face. But I wasn't one to be trifled with. The Fu family was wealthy, yet so was my Qin family. I forced my father to dissolve our engagement, opposed by all but my brother, my sole supporter. I'll never forget that during the cancellation, perhaps because I initiated it and bruised his pride, Vincen sneered at me, heedless of the elders present. Fine, but I'll be the one to end it. Don't regret it or come begging me to marry you later. Unaware of what would follow, I retorted with a cold laugh, whoever begs you to marry is a dog. Unwittingly prophetic, for I later became Vincen's dog indeed. During a transition, my father was framed, shouldering the blame for embezzling vast public funds, sentenced to life. A proud man all his days, he couldn't bear it and took his life in prison. My mother, already despondent over this, had loved my father her whole life. Upon learning of his death, one night she lay in their bedroom, dressed in her favorite skirt he'd given her, and calmly swallowed sleeping pills. Before passing, my mother left a final plea with her dear friend, Vincen's mother, Mrs. Olive, hoping to reinstate my engagement to Vincen so I wouldn't be left adrift. Thus, Vincen was compelled to part with Aria and marry me. Heartbroken, Aria fled abroad. At our wedding, Vincen wore not a single smile. Only during the ring exchange did Vincen chuckle softly in my ear, each word deliberate, like a lover's whisper. Yet his words sent shivers through me. What did I say? Since you begged me to marry you, prepare to live as a dog. When I awoke, the ward was silent, seemingly empty. As I struggled to rise, someone pushed open the door, raising an eyebrow upon seeing me awake and gently helping me up. I was wondering how long you'd take to wake, Galen said, peering at me meaningfully through gold-rimmed glasses. His narrow, phoenix-like eyes, akin to Vincen's, were deep and inscrutable. I couldn't be bothered to decipher it. Fu family members were all alike, as if the world merited only their cursory glance. Uninterested in small talk, I asked bluntly, where's the money? Galen's lips curved, his gaze tinged with resignation. Relax, it's been transferred in batches to new cards. Your 500 million is split across various accounts. This reassured me. $1 billion wasn't an exorbitant demand for a titan like the Fu family, merely straining their cash flow, but for me now, and for Galen, the illegitimate son, it was a substantial sum to wield effectively. Indeed, this kidnapping was a scheme Galen and I devised from the start. I knew Vincen would eventually divorce me per Aria's words. He might toss me a few tens of millions, but that was a pittance for my brother's struggling company. After marrying Vincen, I wasn't initially so submissive. I resisted once, but at night, he'd grip my wrist, loosening his tie while mocking, "Resist what? Don't you care about your brother's company, the last remnant of your family? Please me, and I might invest a little." Recalling my brother's visits, always masking bad news with cheer, and his efforts to negotiate with Vincen to take me home, tears soaked my pillow. Eventually, I became Vincen's true dog, a marionette on strings. Only later did I learn that as my family collapsed and its assets were carved up, the Fu family took the largest share from the Qin family's corpse. After my father's fall, they joined in the assault on us. My marriage, to such a profit-driven clan, wasn't secured by a mother's plea alone. Unbeknownst to me, my brother, to spare me hardship and meet the Fu family's harsh demands, gave them the Qin family's last pillar industry as my dowry. In truth, even without giving it to the Fu family, we couldn't have held it. When a whale falls, all thrive. But learning this, an indescribable hatred and sorrow burned my heart to ashes like a raging fire. Having devoured my family's flesh, Vincen still expected me to grovel like a lapdog, as if I owed him by birthright. Now, as I depart, what these hyenas swallowed must be fully regurgitated and returned to me. Galen told me Vincen had lost his mind, keeping vigil by the sea day and night. When his parents tried to force him away, he fought back, nearly plunging into the water. The incident drew media attention. Idling in my ward, I saw on TV Vincen being dragged off, struggling desperately to stay by the sea. Truly pitiful, unshaven, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. His mother, Mrs. Olive, had tear-reddened eyes. Aria stood beside her, pale, watching Vincen's madness. Her gaze, once brimming with confident adoration, now held deep panic and bewilderment. The media claimed Vincen only realized his true love after losing his wife, and Mrs. Fu's tragic demise had shattered him, driving him to attempt a lover's leap into the sea. I found it laughable while I was alive. All condemned me as a wicked woman who tore others apart, yet once I died, they inexplicably began to pity me. Netizens debated Vincen's choice to save Aria. She was his wife. After all, how could he be so heartless? Yes, a living life. Wait, how do you flip so fast? I recall you all bashing this wife online before. The dead are honored. Let's drop it, they said, making me want to laugh. The person by my bedside, peeling an apple, looked at me helplessly. Serena, ignore what they say online from now on. We'll have no ties to the Fu family. My brother placed the rabbit-shaped apple slices on a plate, feeding me with a fork. You've never liked fruit since you were little. If I'm gone someday, who'll coax you to eat? Eating, I smiled and asked, Brother, is everything sorted with the company? He nodded. After I awoke, I'd had Galen discreetly inform him I was alive. Devastated at first, my brother was overjoyed to hear I lived, pressing Galen to bring him to me. Galen cautioned it wasn't the right time, wary of the Fu family noticing anything amiss. My brother understood, already seething over Vincen choosing Aria over me. He seized the chance to make a scene, publicly severing ties with the Fu family. He declared he'd take my belongings abroad, never to return, preparing to relocate the company. My death provided a plausible excuse for his grief, arousing no suspicion. Now, my brother and I were on the cusp of a bright future. Vincen might feel guilt briefly before joyfully wedding his longed-for Aphrodite, I supposed. I wouldn't dwell on his past humiliations. I never loved him. He'd forget any guilt, for he never loved me either. We'd both embrace new lives. A year later, on a lavish night, I reclined on a sofa in an upscale club, flanked by two bare-chested male models with chiseled abs. Two blonde, blue-eyed hunks embraced me from either side, letting my fingers glide over their abs. They even suggestively kissed them, their eyes seductive. I chuckled. Before me, 6 broad-shouldered, slim-waisted, tall models danced provocatively, shedding a garment with each move. Soon my hands overflowed with ties and jackets. As I caressed abs and admired the dance, reveling in life's pleasures, someone kicked open the door. The models froze, staring in shock, exchanging glances. Seeing Galen, my mood soured. I waved everyone out, what are you here for? Heh, this year with the money, you've really cut loose. Do you truly not know why I've stayed by your side, or are you pretending? Galen's phoenix eyes narrowed beneath his glasses, his tone self-deprecating. I lifted my gaze calmly. I never asked you to stay, you can leave any time. Galen's chest heaved, as if genuinely angered. After a pause, his voice grew hoarse. Serena, you should know I'm not like Vincen. It's fine if you don't trust me. I'll wait, however long it takes. Just as Galen reached the door, my cold words halted him. I truly don't get why you all act like life ends without love. Vincen did, and now you too. Galen, don't fool yourself, you're as hypocritical as Vincen. His figure stiffened, he muttered something I couldn't catch, then left, dejected. I didn't care if Galen was hurt, just as I didn't care if my staged death left Vincen glad or grieved. My life never included them. At home, rabbit-shaped apples sat on the living room table. I smiled, popping one into my mouth, and casually asked the maid cleaning the villa, "Where's my brother?" He'd peeled apples for me but wasn't home. The maid said he was at the company, and since I wanted to check on it too, I drove out. Since I had my brother move the company abroad with the money, he'd never returned, focused on establishing it overseas. At the company, the secretary said my brother was meeting someone. I didn't think much of it, sitting on the sofa outside the CEO's office with a magazine. Soon, the door opened. As I stood, a trembling, incredulous voice called, "Serena?" My heart sank. Sure enough, it was Vincen. Vincen had thinned considerably, still handsome, but his eyes were bloodshot, now, his deep, hawk-like gaze fixed on me, a tear sliding from the corner. "Serena, it's you, right? You're alive, you're alive." His excitement grew, like a weary worker suddenly striking the lottery, teetering on ecstatic madness. Then my brother emerged from the office, unprepared for me to be outside and encounter Vincen, his expression souring. As the turmoil in my heart settled, I chose to confront him. I owed Vincen nothing, after all. I met his unyielding gaze calmly. "Long time no see." It was my first time dining with Vincen so peacefully. Naturally, for him, seeing a dead person reappear likely left him speechless with shock. I stirred my coffee when hands grasped my wrist, trembling faintly. Looking up, Vincen seemed deranged, laughing and crying. "Serena, come back with me, please?" Fearing my refusal, he hastily added, "Nothing's changed at home, it's as you left it. Your things are untouched. I didn't let anyone near them, and those you despised, I've made them vanish. Serena, come back, please? We'll be good, no more quarrels," he concluded, eyes red, voice choking. I found it absurdly ironic, pulling my wrist free. "Quarrels? Vincen, what are you doing playing some wife-chasing redemption? Don't tell me you suddenly fell for me after I left. Shouldn't you be more curious why I'm not dead?" Vincen raised his eyes, attempting a smile that faltered uglily. "Serena, I know you have your reasons, I won't pry, but I didn't suddenly love you. I've always loved you, never anyone else. Is pretending to be devoted fun? Even if it is, you've aimed it at the wrong person. I'm not Aria, and there's no media here to trumpet your affection." I sipped my coffee lightly, my words draining Vincen's color as if deeply wounded. "I never liked Aria. Back when I was young and reckless, I saw you as a family-imposed shackle, so whether it was your birthday or dating Aria on purpose, I just wanted to provoke you. But Serena, I never meant to end our engagement. When you demanded it, I was furious, so after we married, I brought those women home to spite you for that. With Aria, I noticed you ignored every other woman, as if you didn't care about me at all, but her you reacted, showed emotion, making me feel you still cared." I felt a surge of incredulous absurdity. "So you're saying all your humiliations and indulgence of Aria were because you cared too much? That's your way of loving?" Vincen gave a bitter laugh, a picture of a fallen noble. "Only after you left did I see how ridiculous I was, like a teen vying for his crush's attention. But I never touched those women, and I sent Aria away too. I'm sorry, Serena, I know I hurt you. Please, give me a chance to make amends." I chuckled, rising to leave without hesitation. "Your so-called devotion can move yourself, don't disgust me with it." Yet Vincen shouted amid startled onlookers, "Serena, we're not divorced. As long as you live, you're my wife." "No, you're mistaken," I turned, gazing at him coolly. "Your wife was Serena, she's dead. I'm Daisy, and I have no tie to you." With that, I walked away, leaving Vincen stunned, pale, staring after me. Vincen refused to return home, offering no reason. Eventually, the Fu family grew frantic. What did it mean for their heir to stay away? They forcibly had him brought back, granting me peace at last. While he was around, he pestered me daily, and if not me, my brother relentlessly tormenting us both. But since even Vincen knew I lived, the Fu family likely had clues too. I knew it was time to return and sever all ties. Before returning, my brother asked if he should join me. I smiled, shaking my head. I'm not that little girl anymore. He hugged me. You'll always be my little girl, don't fear, I'll always be your support. Back in the country, I went straight to the Fu family's ancestral home. Before meeting Vincen's parents, I encountered someone unexpected. Chloe? Seeing me, Chloe's eyes nearly popped out in shock. She seemed thrilled, stammering, "Madam, no, Miss Serena. You're really alive, wonderful." Chloe said she was still Vincen's secretary, no longer just a decorative figure, blushing as she spoke. "Madam, I'm so sorry about last time. I was blinded by greed. Vincen meant to fire me, but after learning I'd known you, he kept me on, often asking about you. I work hard now. My mom's thrilled too. When are you free? We've always wanted to thank you. Mom wants to cook you a feast." I smiled, patting her shoulder. "All right, I'll visit your mom at month's end. By the way, didn't Aria marry Vincen?" Chloe paused, a flicker of disgust in her eyes. "How could she?" "You may not know she did push for marriage with Vincen, but then it broke that you two were betrothed young, making her the interloper. Aria got slammed online, called a scheming opportunist. People felt duped, cursed her fiercely, even trashed her gallery. She's hiding somewhere now, I think." I listened impassively, struck by life's fickleness. Those who once cursed my family's death now turned on Aria. The world's a vast stage where people see only what they wish. Chloe led me into the Fu ancestral home, where Vincen and his parents were all present. Seeing me, Vincen froze, then his eyes lit with joy. "Serena. You're willing to come back?" But his parents eyed me warily, especially his mother, Mrs. Olive, once my mother's close friend. Mrs. Olive's gaze was complex as she sighed. "Serena, you're alive indeed. Why do it? How has the Fu family wronged you?" I sneered, but Vincen cut in. "The past is done. Serena's return now is enough." "But I didn't say I'd return," I said deliberately. "Vincen's father, Ben, darkened. You're not welcome here either." I sneered, looking at Ben, who looked righteous. I gently said, "You guys got the most of our Chin family's assets, right?" "I just took it back. What's wrong with that?" Under Ben's angry gaze, I looked at Mrs. Olive, who frowned and looked disapproving. "Aunt, do you really not know anything about what Vincen did to me? You asked me how the Fu family has wronged me. I want to know how the Fu family has been worthy of me." Mrs. Olive was speechless. Vincen lowered his head. The wave of regret and pain almost drowned him. I decided to give them the final blow. "Ben, the Fu family has lost a lot this year, right? Galen asked me to tell you that he is coming back." Ben, who was originally rosy, suddenly turned pale. Mrs. Olive's pupils shrank sharply, her nails pinched into her palms, and she looked at her husband with eyes that seemed to want to eat people. I didn't want to watch them fight each other anymore, so I turned around and left. But Vincen chased after me. He held my hand, his voice hoarse and sad. "You hate me. We can never be together again, right?" I looked at him, very calm. "Vincen, I never hate you. I don't hate you or love you. I won't fall into this ridiculous whirlpool of love. Maybe I liked you once. But in front of my life, you are really not worth mentioning. So, live your own life and don't bother me anymore." Under Vincen's desperate gaze, I left the Fu family's old house step by step, this home full of heaviness and decay. The sun outside is very bright, shining warmly on people. I think my life should also be illuminated by the sun. Instead of falling into the love swamp that seems to be full of flowers but is actually full of crises.